The Sharpest College Football Podcast, our Week 14 review. Robert Martin joining me as always. This is BuckMetrics in Newport Beach, California. Robert, I'm feeling much better. The Canadian Special Forces that tried to poison me were unsuccessful this time. Tell your countrymen to try harder next time.
We'll see what we can do next time. But yeah, it's good you're feeling better. But yeah, I'm pretty excited for today, especially for the recap show. That was a pretty crazy weekend of college football, starting just even from Thursday, even from Thanksgiving Day itself, and then culminating into a great Saturday night game. And yeah, it's been a crazy weekend, and we've got an incredible weekend coming up too. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to get right into it this week.
Yeah, the weekend came through even more than expected. All right, if you are new, thank you so much for joining us. Take a screenshot of this glossary. We refer to it throughout the podcast. Save it wherever you save all your college football stuff. And if you are returning, thank you so much. Our numbers go up and up. Amazed by how many people enjoy or have the tolerance or whatever you want to say specifically for our new pod, Island Time. But this is our Week 14 in review, and we will start with who won Week 14. It's like the award of inertia. Just don't screw up at Maryland. My Trojans were not able to do that, so maybe it's easier said than done. But hey, James Franklin goes in, wins by about 50 points. Totally takes a shot at Mike Loxley, too, by pointing out that he had his 3s and 4s in there at the end of the game when a touchdown that hurt Loxley's feelings was scored. You know what? Just don't screw up at Maryland, and now you are playing for the Big Ten title and a possible number 1 seed, just like absolutely nobody outside of college or College Station. That'll be later. State College had it drawn up before the season, right?
Yeah, this is exactly how it was drawn up, right? It was lose to Ohio State in the regular season, and then beat Maryland and go to the Big Ten championship game. That's how everybody thought the season was going to go. But shout out to Penn State here, right? They had been sniffing the top for a while there. They had been undefeated until that loss to Ohio State, which was, to be fair, a very narrow loss. It wasn't a blowout loss in any way. They were always, and again, to be fair, we still doubt them for many reasons, and we will talk about them later in the Big Ten championship game preview. But yeah, no, shout out. This is a big win for them, actually. And it was gifted to them, and a lot of it was not really earned by them. But again, still a massive win for them, 100%. And the thing is, congrats to James Franklin and Penn State here. And yeah, huge win for them. I will say it did look a little choppy early on. There was a little bit of scare against Maryland in the first quarter or so. But I think the reason for that was because like they took the field, and I think basically as they were warming up, they're like, oh, by the way, if you win this game, you're going to the Big Ten championship game. And I think no one thought that was about to happen. So I
Mm.
think it's a bit fair to say that they're probably a bit shocked. They're like, oh wow, we can actually we're playing next week if we win this game. And of course they were massive favorites in the game, but I think it took them for a little bit, and then they settled down and they eventually blew out Maryland. But man, though, like what a crazy ride for this Penn State team to think you're out of it, just win this game, you're good. You get to go sit next week on your couches and watch a bunch of future college kids throw footballs into things to get scholarships. But nope, you're going and you're playing now. Yeah, shout out to them.
Yeah, unfortunately for them, they won't get to see the stupid chest passes that that serve to mimic an actual football pass. But congratulations, that makes for I don't know. I like this rather than the rematch, especially with Ohio State just absolutely spiritually reeling. We'll get to them in a moment. I think this makes for a better matchup too. Speaking of which, your winner of Week 14.
Yeah, I guess we're gonna pick both sides of the Big Ten championship game here. I just want to say here before my next slide is that this is how you avenge a horrible loss against your rival from the last season. Just other teams that we will mention later, take notes. This is how you do it, because Washington beat Oregon twice last year in the regular season and in the Pac-12, rest in peace, championship game. So because of that, Oregon obviously, understandably, was very mad about that. Washington has lost their coach, a lot of the pieces on their team. So Oregon was out looking for blood, and blood they delivered, with the spread being 18 or so, and they won by 28. Shout out to them, and giving all of the rest of college football a lesson as to how to beat your rival that cost you dearly last season. And shout out to the Duck there, just looking on in like awe of the destruction that was happening. And again, this is actually, again, the last 2 seasons in a row we've been subjected to an utterly horrendous Big Ten championship game between Michigan and a team that shouldn't have been there. And now we actually have Oregon versus a team that arguably also maybe shouldn't have been there, but a better team that should be there. Again, it's gonna be a market improvement for this Big Ten championship game. I'm much more excited for this. There's gonna be points scored in this game, so I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah, this will be, yeah, just fun rather than a formality. To that point, I can't remember line this short. Probably, I'm just going to guess since Penn State actually won in 2016. It's probably like the last time that we've had a game that was this competitive. I will point out that you actually faced, at least in one regard, the very best version of Washington, and that the kicker made 2 field goals and an extra point without a single miss, which is got to be the first time for them all season that guy didn't miss something of some sort, because he's been like just absolutely one of the worst kickers all around. And yeah, I'm still angry about that stupid Rutgers game in week 5. All right. Who lost week 14? I'm going off the grid a little bit here for a team, just to skip ahead to the right here, this graphic. A team that was ranked number 21 should not have been, based on the learned opinions of models crafted by you and I, Robert. We had Washington State nowhere near ranked when the first rankings, the playoff committee rankings came out. You might remember in week 5, I actually had Washington State ranked too high. There was some light bending with some numbers because of weird things that happened with them in San Jose State and Washington, just some weird stuff that sorted itself out by then. But boy, for somebody that was a cause celebre of the really too cool for school college football, alleged cognac, losing your last 3 to teams that are combined 13 and 23. I don't think any of these teams are going bowling either. That's really not the way that you want to end your season. And I like Jake Dickert, but losing at home to Wyoming is no bueno, man.
Yeah, this is really rough. This was Wyoming's third win. You put up 14 points against Wyoming, a team that has been destroyed many times this season. This is really rough. And again, I don't. I think it was pretty clear that quote unquote Pac-12 teams were not getting into the playoff this year. In no way were they going to. And I don't think. I think what it basically is now is that I don't know what a lot of people thought the playoff was gonna be. I think here's the thing. I think a lot of people are completely surprised by what it is. To be fair, I'm a little surprised too, but far less surprised than I think what a lot of other people think it was. Like I figured it was going to be a funnel to getting the SEC and the Big Ten in, and then you might get like maybe one or two Big 12 or ACC teams, and then that and one G5 team, and that's it. But I think a lot of other people thought, oh, we're gonna have two G5. No, that was never gonna happen. Or oh, we're gonna have three Big. Like no, that was never gonna happen either. I think we were a lot more clear-eyed about what it was, and this we were right about this part. But even we were like, oh, okay, it's still gonna be. But no, it's everybody's getting the minimum amount of bids, and then the rest of them are going to the Big Ten and the SEC. And I think that's one part of it too. But again, Washington State, yes, they're going bowling. This has been a really rough sled the last 3 weeks. We'll see what they do in a bowl game. Based on the last 3 weeks, not a lot. So we'll have to see. But yeah, this has been a very rough couple of last closing out here for Washington State. And I think it just shows in general that the Mountain West and such is just down. Yeah, we'll have to see how this goes. Okay, I'll call Washington State and Oregon State the Mountain West because they are the Mountain West.
Yeah.
But next year they will be a Pac again, a Pac-12 which has 6 teams or something. So we'll see. They will rebuild, and we'll see what they turn up in a couple of years. But yeah.
Yes, although they are going to deal with the coaching change that we will get to when we get to one to your topics here. I would want to point out also that New Mexico and Wyoming were among those that did not make the new Pac-12 cut, which is even a worse look in terms of a game you didn't want to win. But speaking
Yes.
of worse looks, I don't know what gets worse than this.
Yeah, this has to be easily the biggest loss of rivalry week here. This should not have happened. In no way should this have happened. Um, and again, shout out here to the moments here. Michigan won the game, and they tried to plant the flag on their opponent's field, and then the Ohio State players got into a big fight about it. To which it's, you know what, maybe you should have fought more during the game
Yeah.
instead of fighting after the. What were you doing? This was, and a couple of people have pointed this out, and this is true. This was like the worst version of Michigan that they're gonna play all year. for a while, right? Last year, you obviously got the national championship winning Michigan version, and you came close to beating them. Didn't beat them, but you came close to them. This year is infinitely worse, especially on offense. And if you had told me that if you had said to us before the game, okay, Michigan's going to score 13, I'd have said I'm going to take the negative 19 and a half. I would have 100% said I'm taking the negative 19 and a half. Ohio State's putting up 30. They're going to win 30 to 13. I would not have said, oh, Ohio State's going to put up 10.
Yeah.
I don't know what they were doing, and we'll talk a bit more about them offensively here in a bit. But man, what even happened in this game? And again, the last year you had to play them on the road. Okay, that's fine. You know what? It's a bit difficult. They did win the national championship game. Some of this can be explained away. This one is extremely hard to explain away. This one, and to be fair, this could have been worse because Ohio State actually intercepted a pass in the end zone. This could have actually been like 20 to 10. They could have covered. They could have covered like a minus 7.5 here. That's how bad this was. This is so unbelievably bad and completely inexplicable in the history of not just this rivalry, but of the results from this weekend. That it's comical. It's almost comical as to like how this even happened. Yeah.
Yeah. It's literally, I don't know. Like, this is, I'm going to say this inarticulately. This is Ryan Day's superhero power, just that's gone awry. It just, he pulls out of a loss here where it's just unimaginable. I don't know, but that's been dissected by people who are more articulate than me. My favorite moment of this actually was, as there are 4 interceptions in this game. I can't remember which, but what's the one that throws? Is it Davis Warren?
I think it's Davis Warren, yeah.
Okay. He did a play action pass and he executed it pretty well, but he was holding the ball like he had just, I don't know, scaled the Empire State Building in a minute and a half. Like, he was so proud of himself, and he threw that end zone interception. He thought he had just done it. He thought as soon as he did the play action pass and he did the fake, he was certain it was going to be a touchdown. And he just had this gait, this way he was like trotting around, just looking for the open man. It looked very weird, and then it was abruptly ended with that end zone interception. I loved that. I want to say one thing about okay, Michigan was gutsy here. They didn't have great quarterback play. It needs to be pointed out, though, and this is clip and save for those of the people who know clip and save from 50 years ago when everything was in newspapers. But just make a mental note here, folks. Michigan stunk on offense basically all season unless they were playing Northwestern, which is the cure for every bad offense. This is an offensive guy, not offensive, not pleasant, very pleasant man. He's offensive coordinator last year, background is on offense, and his offense stunk all year. They had one good game. They are not impressive. They really did not improve because I guarantee you, if you took that Northwestern game and put it in week 2, it would have been the same result with 50-7 or whatever it was. They did not improve. And I understand that he was not dealt a great team, but because he was not dealt a great roster to begin with, you should have seen serious improvement through the year. You should have seen learning curve exponentially. It's not like he got a fully formed thing and it wasn't supposed to screw it up. Literally, you should have seen big improvement if this guy, he was the offensive coordinator and now he's just the head coach. This offense flatlined for pretty much the entire season. And just remember it, because I think people are going to look at this and they're going to look at Bryce Underwood. And I think there's going to be a lot of salivation, premature salivation, just to use a malapropism of bodily fluids, over Michigan's prospects next year. And I'm going to go in with a skeptical eye, as I do with every team, but maybe especially so when it comes to Michigan in 2025. I think this might just be a false tailwind for next season.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And again, Michigan does have one more game against a bowl. They're 7-5. I think Florida's 7-5. That'd be a fun game. But you said sarcastically. But no, we'll see. I'm sure we'll be talking about Michigan in the offseason, and they will be an interesting team to talk about. And we should bookmark this. And they are an interesting story in this. Their season has been a very interesting season. We were lower on them for pretty much everybody on the season, and that was proven completely correct. But even I didn't expect anything close to this. This was a huge shock to me. I did not put anything on this game. I think I had it within a point of what the spread actually was. So I didn't touch this. Didn't touch
Yeah.
anything on this game. Was watching it though. It was my main game at the noon window. And I was just like, this is hilarious. I was watching this with sick fascination of like car wreck. And you're like, oh, is this actually happening? Is this going to happen? Oh my God, this is happening. Could you believe? That was what was going through my mind. I'm like, I can't believe this is actually going to happen. And and they did it. And again, I just want, one last thing I want to say too, because Michigan scored the field goal. And then Ohio State had the ball back with, I think, like a minute left or something. And I'm not
Yes.
sure if you were watching this or not. That was the most pathetic attempt I've ever seen to get a first down. Not even win. That was the most pathetic attempt to get a first down I've ever seen in my entire life. And I've watched a lot of football, not just in my life in the last week, the last month, this year. I've never seen a word. They gave up. They're just like, nope, we're done. And then they fight after about the flag. The
Yeah.
team somewhere in that game just gave up and they're just like, we're done. And you guys have another game. You guys have to play another game here. Not this week, but a couple weeks from now, you're going to have to play another game. Maybe even go on the road. I'm not sure. Maybe someone's coming up to visit you. Some names that you have to play a Tennessee team. You might have to play you might have to play like an Alabama or a Tennessee or I'm trying actually no, it won't be any. Well, Boise State maybe. You're going to have to play a pretty good team probably from the SEC. You sure you're going to be okay with this? You sure this is okay? Let's see here. But the way that team was acting in that second half, especially in that fourth quarter, the fight was completely out of them. And now maybe that was just okay, we're done in this rivalry game, and it just this pressure got to them. But if that carries over to the next game, man, I don't know here. That's really
Uh,
concerning.
Fair point, but it didn't 2 years ago. It didn't carry over when
True,
they so that'll be interesting. But
but a
that's
year ago it did though. A year ago it did with the
oh,
bowl
come
game.
on. They don't care about that. Missouri, who cares?
Yeah, the Sugar Bowl.
Um,
Who cares about the Sugar Bowl?
but if you're not in the playoff coming
I
to that
know, I
program,
know, I
I will say this just as a great measure of the scope of this upset. I've never heard Gus lose his voice like he did. I think it was on that
the
big Khalil
interception.
Williams run,
Yeah,
or was the interception? Yeah, he just it's like he actually broke a vocal
intercepted.
cord there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not
I
even gonna
heard
try to do it. Yeah, that was peak.
intercepted, intercepted. It was insane. That was crazy. I was laughing. It was amazing. That was the Ohio State interception of the past. That was a great. There were so many classic games this weekend. This one has to be up there. In that moment, like the intercepted.
Yeah,
He's broke a vocal cord. It was great.
I'm gonna watch that on. I have Big Ten Plus. Thank you, Big Ten, for screwing over all your. I'll get my money and just watch that 10 times. All right. Moving on, victory laps. I would want to thank basically everybody. Now we have more viewers and listeners now than we did in the preseason, and thank you for that. But thank you to basically the people for checking in on the previews and keeping me honest. I honestly think, just real here, this is a victory lap of my preseason plays. 45% ROI, which I will take 11 times out of 10. Subject to 1%. My winners are in, let me grab, here we go. My winners are in green. I've got my hedges in blue here. I have not hedged UNLV yet. It's not that big of a play. This is not that much at stake. I might just let that ride. So this might be 46 or 44, depending on how that goes. And since Boise's a favorite, it's not really not worth it hedging that much. But gotta say, I really think that because we had by the format of this year's previews, the conference previews was so thorough and we have such good guests that I think that really made me have to, it's like you had to explain your thesis. And I think that really helped me in the plays this season. The biggest thing, as much as anything, the overall record isn't great. All right, I lost the conversation pieces. These are basically, let's say, the loves are 6 units, the likes are basically 2 to 4 units, and the conversation pieces were a half unit to under. And so I think in going through all the previews, when I'm talking with people like you and Duck and Reed, when I did the American, for example, I didn't have an American here, but who did the Sun Belt with us? That was Josh.
Hmm.
Talking with smart people and just making my case and then hearing the case, the other side of that from smart people too, really makes you hash out what you really like and love and just or whatever about. As much as I want to take credit for this, I want to give credit to you and to all the guests that we had because that's really what made this happen. This is by far the most informed set of plays I made, and the overall record, like I said, isn't great. But you size your bets right, something that took me 32 years in horse racing to learn. Size your bets right, and you can come out ahead, even though you're not the smartest guy in the building.
Yeah. No. a lot of the big plays we had came out really well. And again, you still have some pending, right? That Iowa State Big 12 needed some help from BYU that at point acted like they didn't want to win that game. But they did win that game. I guess grudgingly they won the game. It's not like BYU just grudgingly won that game. They're just like, fine, whatever, we'll just win this game. And but a lot of the other ones, right? Iowa State over 7.5, Boise State 9.5, Southern Miss under 4, Kennesaw State. I think one of the more interesting pieces of this is how few Power 4 and even Big 2 plays there are, right? Obviously, okay, Iowa State's there, Auburn's there, obviously Indiana and Washington, but like 4 of what, 10? Not even 4 of 10,
Yeah.
4 probably closer to 12 are your plays, right? This is what we do, and I think that the followers of us and people who are following us will know this. We don't focus so much on, oh, we like Oregon's win total over. We like Georgia's win total. We don't really care that much about those. We look for more value. We say, oh, look, again, Mississippi State was one we had talked about as well. We say, okay, we don't think Kennesaw State is an FBS team. And
Mm-hmm.
for 10 weeks, they weren't. But
Somehow
that's the
Liberty made
thing.
them an FBS team.
Yeah. But that's the thing, right? We have plays like that. We're like Southern Miss. I think they have what, 2? They got 2 wins. These are plays we like. Auburn, again, under 7.5. No idea why that was plus money. They didn't even make a bowl game, right? That cashed weeks ago, right? We find plays, we find angles that a lot of people don't like. Again, a lot of people are betting Ohio State over wins, right? A lot of people are betting Oregon over wins or whatever. We're like, let's play Auburn under, right? These are the kinds of plays we find, and we're good at that, and that's what we do, right? So that, yeah, and we deserve a 45% ROI. That's huge with some pending, right? Iowa State 2-point dogs there, SMU the favorite in the ACC title game, and UNLV a potentially a very spry dog there in on Friday night. Not done counting yet. Not done counting.
I've fully hedged Iowa State and SMU. I've been left at the altar too many freaking times. I mean, by tough ones too. Nick Rolovich's last season at Hawaii, I think I had them at 20-1, and they didn't even come close against Boise. But I wish I would have been able to hedge in that final game. Also, the first time that Leipold took Buffalo to the MAC conference title, that was a big number 2. And God, I think they lost to Northern, and Northern wasn't good. Northern just breaks my model. I hate Northern in Illinois. I'm sorry. Sorry, Huskies fans. Sorry, people DeKalb. I'm sure you're nice, but screw your football team. I've had it with them. All right. Speaking of unders, yes.
Game of the week here. We're saying that this was like the most important game for us this week. We're like, Iron Bowl, who cares about the Iron Bowl? This is the most important game. And yeah, it came through. And again, Louisiana Tech, they understood the assignment. They did it. They didn't screw around. Ohio State, take notes. But yeah, Louisiana Tech, they understood the assignment, got the job done. No overtime this week for Kennesaw State, and they will go home without covering their win total over. But they do have a new coach now, and I think they're hiring the running back coach of, oh, who was it? It's actually not a bad coach. I think it's an NFL running backs coach, I think, right?
At Kennesaw?
So that, oh no, I'm forgetting I'm getting the wrong owl. I think, oh, it's FAU is hiring someone.
Yes.
There are like
Yeah,
a lot of
Rice
owl
Echo.
teams.
There are. Or FAU. Yeah, there were 3 owl teams that were looking for new
Yeah,
coaches. Rice Owls,
yeah.
FAU Owls, and I think that's
Kennesaw
everybody,
State
right?
Owls, yeah.
It's a Temple Owls too, right? Aren't they?
Yeah, I
And they
think.
just hired a new
Yeah,
coach.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're all 4
How
are
did we
looking
miss this? The most
for,
endangered species was the owls.
yeah.
Um,
But yeah, so they will find a new coach. But again, this team did things down the stretch, which is surprising because we didn't think they were. Like, if you had said Kennesaw State's 2 wins were going to come against Liberty and who else did they win? Who else did they beat? FIU?
FIU.
I'd have been like, no. But that's what happened. Liberty was what, favorite to have over 10.5 wins, and one of Kennesaw State's 2 wins was against Liberty. You love this game. You
Yeah.
love this game.
Yeah. I've got a comment on that coming up in a bit. All right. My overperformer of the week. This is pretty easy. You and I are not fans of this program, but this atmosphere, this pregame was literally as good as it ever gets in this sport for Texas versus A&M, man. That was just unreal. That was so cool. I loved that ABC had the lyrics to not the fight song, but the war hymn for the Aggies. I'm just going to indulge him a little bit here. So you could just, so the average person could just see just how stupidly obsessed they are with Texas, as like 70% of the lyrics are about Texas and the Texas mascot and animal cruelty to the Texas mascot. What all, but that's literally as good as it gets. That was an awesome atmosphere. Literally just what you only hope for once a year. Because if you get that every game, it becomes less special. Props to them. That would be almost uniquely A&M just in this game after that absence in this venue. I'm so glad it was in this venue. And in that regard, A&M is like your neighbor who has a great smoker and is excellent at a barbecue. But if you go over the barbecue, you're going to get like a 45-minute discussion where he tells you, look, income tax is voluntary. You really don't have to pay. And at the end, you just want to just leave. That's A&M is. The last thing that kind of sunk into me, and I don't know, I know this will not be a popular opinion in College Station. I'm curious if you think the same way. It, I thought today, thinking about this, it really seems like A&M didn't really join the SEC until Texas did. I know Johnny Manziel beat Nick Saban, but this made them more weird. It weirdly Texas made them more of a full fledged than now because they were wondering about just trying to beat Nick Saban every once in a while and otherwise just pissing all over themselves. But this was different.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense in some ways. I think Texas A&M always stood out weirdly in the SEC, partly because they were like by far the far most Western team by a mile in the SEC. Because everything else was like your packet of your Southeast, like your Georgia, Florida, Alabama. But they stuck out weirdly as like they're different. They're not like
They
everyone
were the
else.
villain west of the Mississippi, huh?
Yeah.
I never thought
And
about that
now
until
I
now.
and I think now that you've got Texas, there wasn't really a natural rival for Texas A&M, right? Okay, we're gonna play
Mm-hmm.
LSU in the last week of the season, and then break overtime rules forever for all of college football. So thank you guys for that. That was great. This is way better now. But this is the thing, right? It's I think with now you have a natural rival for them and they're better this year too. Do you really feel like this is a
Yep.
complete SEC team, and this is starting to feel like a full, complete conference, which is weird because it's actually a very full conference, but it's starting to feel like everybody has its own little place now, and that I don't think Texas A&M had that before. It does make sense that they're now they're an SEC team now because of Texas.
Yeah, just part of just a really special Saturday. And as somebody who had the under in that game, people might say that game was not exciting. This is why you bet unders, those kind of games right there. An awesome defense, a good defense, a hurt quarterback, and a young quarterback. Just I'm salivating just thinking about just that menu. That under better's dream. All right. You had a different kind of overperformer here, but along the same lines.
Yeah, you talk about Saturday night rivalry games, Friday night rivalry games. Man, what is this graph? Look at this graph. This is insane. I was watching this game a little bit when Georgia Tech started taking the lead. I'm like, hey, are they actually going to upset them? And look, for a while there in the third and into the fourth, they had like a huge chance to win the game. And then there was some really bad calls. We'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. But man, this game itself just massively overperformed expectations here. Like again, the spread was 24, I think. Should not have been a competitive game. Georgia should have walked away with this, taken it away, just ended the game right then. Should have been a blowout. It was far from a blowout. This is probably one of in my opinion, the best college football games of all time. Honestly, like it's up there in terms of just competitiveness and the fact that you had no idea who was going to win this game. It was extremely unclear who was going to win this game for a large part of it. And again, this has been a rivalry that's been dormant the last couple of years. Georgia Tech not been the greatest team in recent years. Georgia has been a good team for a while, so this rivalry has been dormant. But now that you have Brett Key as now the full-time coach there at Georgia Tech, again, this program is not quite there yet in terms of dominant program because while they were able to take down Miami and Georgia, two theoretical playoff teams. We'll talk about Miami in just a moment. Um, you're not quite there yet. You're still taking enough. You're taking too many losses through the regular season. If you clean that up, yeah, we can talk about Georgia Tech being one of the best teams in the country. But it's weird how this team is able to be competitive with a top 10 team, but at the same time lose a bunch of random games that they should not be losing, right? Yeah, I'm happy to see this rivalry back, and this was an amazing game on a Black Friday night, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, and you take me to my underperformer, which is basically the other, the team on the other sideline. First of all, let's just to your point, let's just get this out of the way. Georgia Tech won one road game all season, so congratulations on that. And you're Georgia, and this team took you to 8 overtimes. No bueno. This is a team that basically has struggled to pass the ball successfully throughout the year, and they go for 8.4 an attempt with no interceptions. That's troubling. And they ran for 5.5 per attempt. They 2.5 times what Georgia ran for, an SEC team. I'm just telling you, when your guys passed for under 7 per attempt, looked just hopeless for stretches against an okay, but I'd say okay defense at times. We've seen Georgia do this again and again. They tend to be lower scoring, although in fairness, 8 overtimes skews everything. But, this is a lifestyle for Georgia 2024. And it's almost not an underperformer in that I'd expect it to, they keep on just playing teams way too close. And that defense is nowhere as good as its reputation. If you want to back Carson Beck in the playoffs, Godspeed to you. I am not parking my car in that garage. I can tell you that. I The more Georgia goes along, the more questions I have.
Yeah, I will say so too. This game could have gone very differently for Georgia. Basically Georgia Tech had a lead. They had a touchdown lead. There was a point in this game when basically Georgia was down, or no, I think it no Georgia actually I think Georgia Tech had a two touchdown lead I think in the fourth, and Georgia was down two scores. Basically, Georgia Tech scored in the fourth. Georgia was down three scores, and then they scored quickly. They were down 14. Then Georgia Tech tried running the ball up the middle. It was a quarterback run up the middle. It sounded like the ref was blowing the whistle to mark forward progress. A Georgia player randomly slams into the quarterback with his helmet. The ball is fumbled, and initially no one reacts because a lot of the players thought that the play was dead, but then a couple of Georgia players grab the ball up, scoop it up, and then they try to recover the fumble, and then they get tackled. But then they were like, okay, was it a fumble or not? And I thought the ref had blown a whistle, but I guess maybe not, I don't know. They marked forward progress. But then when you see the replay, and it's very clear on the replay when you see the Georgia player's helmet coming in, so the Georgia Tech players here, his helmet's coming in, they're like, oh, he hit the ball. But basically, as his helmet is coming in, the quarterback's helmet snaps up quickly and comes back, which indicates you hit him right smack dab in the center of the mask, which you basically gave him a concussion, which would explain why he dropped the ball. That was completely ignored. No one cared about that. It's a fumble. Georgia has the ball. Then on that possession, when Georgia was trying to get it back to within 7, there was a very blatant holding call that they missed. Basically, Georgia was able to claw back into the game from that point on. They tied the game, went to overtime, and then Georgia reffing in overtime was fine. There wasn't really any problems with it in overtime. And Georgia's a couple points, as you saw on the graph just a slide ago. There was a lot of times this game was deeply in question for Georgia Tech. If Georgia Tech had just put it away and gotten a 2-point conversion in a couple of times, they would have won the game. But that never happened. And this game was just insane. And we'll talk about the SEC championship a bit later in part 2. But this Georgia team is super suspect. I think the Texas team is also a little suspect as well, depending. But this is a very suspect Georgia team. I do not think they're that good. And I'm going to just put it out there. Actually, we'll talk about it a bit more in a bit. But, this team is very odd to me. I don't think I think right now their name is Georgia, so that's why they are, quote-unquote, one of the best teams in the country. That's why they're a 7th team. That's why and they're going to the SEC championship game, so they are a good team. But if this team did not have the name Georgia beside it, if this team was said Ole Miss, if it's at Ole Miss or Mississippi State or something like that, they would not be ranked 7th.
Hmm.
I think that's pretty clear that if Kirby Smart was not the coach of this team, they would not be ranked 7th. And that's a bit of a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good point. I wonder if they had the same record, the same everything, but just even Mark Richt was still their coach. They'd probably be about 4 sports spots lower, I'm thinking. All right, year underperformer.
Yeah, I'm just gonna piling on Oklahoma here. Last week you upset Alabama, and then next week you lose by 20 to LSU. Shout out to this because Oklahoma, Texas is Oklahoma's rival, and Texas A&M was LSU's adopted rival. So I guess they just dumped each other, and then they're like, all right, well, our exes dumped us. Let's go out on this date on rivalry week. But again, you destroy Alabama, possibly ending their hopes for a playoff berth, and then you just turn around and you're just like, yeah, let's do. Not even particularly close. I have no idea what this Oklahoma team is. I also have equally no idea what this Alabama team is. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting. This could be a very interesting next year for both of these teams, I think. And that's just a massive underperformance by Oklahoma there.
Agree. I want to just use this as an opportunity to bring up something though that I think really needs to be discussed, and that is, I think this is a I think Brent Venables made a brilliant hire. You might remember before the season when he had brought in Seth Luttrell as his new OC. I said, I don't like this. Seth Luttrell's offenses were not good at North Texas. They were only good those 2 seasons when Graham Harrell was the OC. And besides that, they stunk. And he fired Luttrell during the season. Don't know if you saw who he actually hired as the new OC at Oklahoma. Did you see this?
I
I
think
Ben
I thought I saw
Arbuckle
something.
of Washington State,
Oh, okay,
um,
that's not horrible.
which is I think it's brilliant. I think it's perfect. This is the guy who turned around Cam Ward, and he was solid plus at Western Kentucky also. So yeah, agree. They didn't show up. It's been a rough season. I can commiserate as also a fan of a 6-6 program, but geez, like I said during the season, we're at the point where Venables. I know their defense is going to be good every season, and that could really work out well. So yeah, they stunk in that game. Death Valley, when you have nothing to play for, is probably not going to be a fun trip. But I do the hire of Ben Arbuckle, really smart hire, I think, by Venables there. All right, things that annoyed Robert. Go ahead with this, please.
So this was Friday night, and a lot of people also pointed this out on Twitter. And this is actually a direct quote. This was far from the first time Joe Tessitore said this. On the night. He routinely said, if Georgia wins this game, they go to the college football playoff. And then here, this is the beginning and last play of the game, and he says to make the college football playoff. And again, Joe Tessitore, as we all know, noted clairvoyant. This is insane because one, no, that's not how this works. That's not how it should work. But at the same point in time, this is highlighting the insanity of how this is going to play out because he said a couple things insane during this entire broadcast. When Georgia Tech was up massively, he said Georgia will play next week in the SEC championship game. If they lose today, they'll play next week. If they win next week, they're in. But if they lose next week, they're out. Which is insane because none of this makes any sense. Because how can a team that is good enough to make the SEC championship game, but then lose a game? Now, okay, yes, it's a rivalry game, and it's against a not horrible Georgia Tech team, but like how is it that a team that makes the SEC championship game would then have to win the SEC championship game if not they get eliminated from the playoffs? But conversely, how can they clinch it by just getting to they're going to the SEC championship game anyway? None of this makes any sense. And people are like, "Oh, it's a conspiracy with the SEC and ABC." I don't care about that. That's just dumb. I'm not trying to. This isn't like a conspiracy theorist thing. It's just that the system we have created now is so absolutely insane that apparently if you lose a conference championship game, which you get in by the way through it, there's no divisions anymore. So it's not like, oh, one division has all the good teams, the other division has all of the bad teams. Cough cough, Big Ten West. But because that doesn't exist anymore, now it's theoretically your two best teams getting in there. How have we created a system whereby a team can lose a rivalry game one week And then if they don't win the championship game the next week, then they're out of the playoff. And then we're going to throw in another team that they probably, because they didn't beat either Alabama or no, we'd be putting in Tennessee, a team they beat, or we'd be putting in Alabama or Ole Miss, a team they also beat. This system is insane. There's clearly some problems here. See, I think, and we've mentioned this before, and no one's really said this specifically yet. And I think we'll put to words, I think, what the issue is here. Is that I think not the committee didn't do this. I think college football, the Big Ten, the SEC, the conferences, they got together and they said, you know what? In the most recent years, the reason we even have a playoff in the first place was because some years it was really easy to pick number 1 and 2, and then they play off against each other and then that's it. Sometimes it's really easy to do that, but there's a couple times it was hard to pick 1 and 2. Sometimes there was a really tough debate between 2 and 3, or even 1, 2, and 3. So then they said, all right, let's expand it to 4. Okay. Then all of a sudden it became sometimes really hard to pick between 4 and 5. So they say, okay, you know what we're going to do? Let's expand it out. So we get a couple of rounds here. We'll give some buys into the conference champions and stuff, and that's fine. But we're going to make it easier to basically you can pretty much agree on who the top 4 are. Maybe there's a debate between 4 and 5. But if you have a 2-round system, it doesn't really matter that much. And then there should be there's pretty easy debate. And in the old system, it would have been like, okay, we're going to have the SEC East and SEC West. Those 2 teams will make it, and the Big Ten East, the Big Ten West, and we'll have pretty much all the division winners in, and then we'll pick a couple of wild card spots. And then that's it, we're done. But the problem is you destroyed all that because now there's no divisions. So now you can't say this team won their division because they didn't. But the problem is the conferences are now too big that, oh yeah, Georgia lost to Alabama and Ole Miss, but they beat Tennessee, and then they beat Texas, but then they never played South Carolina. Or you could say Ole Miss didn't play Alabama, they beat Georgia. They didn't play Tennessee, they didn't play Texas, they didn't play Georgia, right? So you now have these massive disparities because you don't have divisions anymore. And they created this problem, but they didn't realize they were creating this problem at the same time. So the only solution to this is you now have to expand the playoff. And this is the problem. We've now created this insane system whereby if a team loses and they're going to their championship game, if they lose that week before, then theoretically if they lose that game then they're out, but if they make it they win. And basically in that scenario, Georgia would be competing against in next week. If Georgia had lost this game, Georgia would have been competing against the ghost of Alabama and Ole Miss, which is an insane thing to say. They're competing as would Alabama or Ole Miss have done a better job against Texas than Georgia. And they still are, to be fair, because you can make an argument that Alabama and Ole Miss should be ranked ahead of a 3-loss Georgia team. But are you going to punish a Georgia team for losing their conference championship game? I don't know. Let's see what the committee says, because I know they have at least one spot for another SEC team, which is probably going to be Alabama, because of course it is. But what are you going to do with South Carolina now? South Carolina just this week possibly beat the ACC championship winner. Now Clemson could lose to SMU. They are underdogs in that game. But are you going to say South Carolina, yeah, it doesn't matter. You're not going to do it because you lost to Alabama and you lost to Ole Miss, so we're still going to rank you below them even though you have a better win than some of the other teams, right? This is an insane system, and I think there's going to be a huge problem. We're going to be talking about this 2 weeks from now, and I think we're going to be talking about what the committee got wrong, and I think I could tell you right now what's going to get wrong. And the question now is Georgia next week when they play Texas, they play Texas, they're playing against the ghost of 2 SEC teams as well as Texas, which is great because that's exactly how this is supposed to be decided. Good job.
Going back to what Tessitore said, should he have just done a callback to that Florida State where he said for honor and respect, whatever that stupid
to restore was. Honor and respect.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, that was not one of Joe Tess's better days, and he has a lot of not better days, but that was especially not a better day. All right, my Narduzzi Award. You know what? I didn't think we were going to make it the whole season without him surfacing, and he did. He played with fire, and just first of all, thank you to your model for making this a non-play. You saved me. I really wanted to, but then when I think it was in Island Time, I think I said it would be just like him, just to have it within his grasp and to lose a stupid game like this. And Syracuse is 9-3. But if you're that much better, and you have the best offense You have the best offense by my measurement, basically the entire season. You have one of the best passing offenses in all of college football. You, I guess maybe in fairness, if there's a handful of people that I don't want to see go up by 21 points this quickly in the game, this is one of those coaches. I'd feel if Mario's my coach, I'd weirdly feel much more comfortable being up 21-0, scoring that third touchdown halfway through the third quarter rather than early second quarter. I just love that this Justice Sandal has clearly lived through a lot. I just love that clearly in this person's recent past, there's enough where he or she, I don't know what Justice is a man or woman. Mario Blunder. That's already in the lexicon here of this person's work. I love that. I love that basically by the time that this guy is your coach for a year, what you're in for, it's going to happen. And it's capitalized too. Capital M, capital B, Mario Blunder. And it happened. It happened. It happened. It happened. He and Narduzzi both earned awards, not for lack of trying either on Mario's part, but his team just lifted him up. I don't know if there's a way to separate him from Cam Ward and make it like a super special award. Like maybe, I don't know, maybe he gets 3, but Cam Ward gets -2. And so it nets to 1 for Mario. I don't know. As I said, though, before coming to the season, Mario just makes light bend when it comes to numbers. And just another example here.
Yeah, this was really funny, right? Because in Island Time, we talked about this game, and the spread. I think I had a 14-point spread or something. I think the spread was like 11, and I said that's suspiciously close. I remember saying that to him. That is suspiciously close. That's a suspiciously small spread for that game. And sure enough, and if you go to the next slide here, this is we're gonna talk about the field goal, right? With basically Miami was down. Miami was down a touchdown because there had been a scoop and score by Syracuse. What happened was they were down a touchdown, and they were driving the length of the field, and it was fourth down deep in Syracuse territory. And basically, there was like a minute and a half left in the game, and I was like, okay, I think it was like 4th and 6 or something. And again, you have arguably one of the best offenses in all of college football against a defense you scored 38 points against. Um, or I think at that point 35 points. You've only scored touchdowns against them. They decided to kick a field goal down 7 with a minute and something left. Why? What was and the best part was the there
Should
we
we
go.
go B
Yeah.
here now? There we go. Sorry, thanks.
There we go. Yeah, so 3:42 left in the fourth. 3:42 left from the fourth on the 4th and goal from the 10th. So they had 4th and goal from the 10th. Instead of trying to go for it again, they like to kick a field goal. They were at 42 35 down 7. They kick a field goal and the commentators were saying, "Oh, this is good. All they need is a stop." And I was like, "They've scored 42 points. You have not stopped them all game. Yeah, let's just stop that team we've allowed 42 points against. I'm sure that will work. What are you doing?" And this is a team that scored 42 points against you. Now, okay, fine. 35. Oh, wow. One of them was a defensive score. Okay, 35. That's so much better. They've only scored 35 against you. Wow, that's so much better. But you like, oh, all we gotta do is stop them one time. Well, okay, there's 3 minutes left. If they get one first down, then this game is over. And they got the 2 first downs, and the game was over. You took the ball out of Cam Ward's hands, and again, he's not just a throwing threat; he's also a running threat too. Could have gotten that goal. He could have gotten that touchdown a couple of different ways. You take that away from him to just what? Push them back an extra 10 yards if you didn't get it. If you don't get that, it's first down from their own 10-yard line or whatever you get, right? If maybe you get 5 yards or something, right? It's first, they're deep in their own zone. That's better than you kicking it off to pin them. 1,000% better than that. And then they just ran out the clock and you lost. Was Mario trying to cover like an alt 4.5 point spread? I don't know what he was trying to do. Like, they were 11.5 point favorites. Did he was it like a 20-point teaser or something? I have no idea what he did. I have no idea why he did this. And this is insane. I've never seen the commentators are like, oh, it's good. They just need to stop them one time. And people online, what? People on Twitter, it was so funny because I'm like, there's no way people are just accepting this on Twitter. People are like, what is Miami doing? Why is Cristobal doing this? This makes no sense. Why are you kicking a meaningless field goal? It was absolutely insane. The best part is too, if this is the thing, right? Like whenever you have a chance to go from needing a touchdown to also needing a touchdown, like you gotta take it, right? The field goal was meaningless. In some cases, if it's, oh, we're down 5 or something, or we're down 4 or something, then yeah, okay, you kick the field goal, because then you get the ball back, you march down the field, you kick another field goal, you're winning. That wouldn't have worked here. That still wouldn't have worked. They would have had to kick 2 more field goals. Or then, if we score a touchdown, then we're up by 3. You could just go for 2 then. This makes no sense. It made no sense at all. This was the stupidest field goal I've ever seen in my entire life. And yeah, and now they're probably eliminated. Now they're not making the ACC championship game, and now they're gonna the committee's gonna stuff in an Alabama over them, which good riddance. And this is the thing for Cristobal, this was it. Cam Ward is very unlikely to play the whatever bowl game you land up in, whatever bowl game sponsored by some sort of aircraft carrier company you get put in. Cam Ward's gonna opt out of it because he's gonna be a first top 10 draft pick in the NFL probably. This was your shot. This was your shot to bring a championship to Miami. You had a first round NFL talent quarterback. You had a bunch of first round talent NFL receivers, but your defense was horrible. And this was not the only time this defense has been horrible this year. This defense has been horrible for a large part of this year. And this was your shot. Okay, yeah, maybe you can go in the portal and you can get another decent quarterback, but you're not going to be able to recoup the same amount of receiver talent, and you're probably not like unless you bring in 4 deep backs and the defensive line, you're not going to improve your defense that much. This was your shot, and it's gone now. And I kind of think I think Cristobal's going to be on a bit of a hot seat next year. Honestly, I could see them being like a 7-5 team next year.
I don't know about that, but I do know that it's going to be fascinating to watch because you're losing a lot of pieces on offense that basically bailed his ass out again and again and again. And if he can come up with another Cam Ward in the portal, great. Is there one? I don't know. We'll see. But I think he got uniquely fortunate with the roster management that he was able to portal to this season. I don't know if he'll have it. One other thing that's just funny to remember, you might remember before the season, that's what I was looking up on my phone. Before the season, I want to get the right term, he hired a time management coach. It was not a late game management coach. So now he needs one of those too, just for these other decisions. So he's going to have a 125-year-old guy saying when to call a timeout and when not to call a timeout. And then you have another guy in the payroll to tell him when to go for the touchdown versus the field goal.
Just get
at what point does it just become, look, you're not a football coach, but go ahead.
Just get one of those like Madden players. Just have him on the sideline every Saturday. And when we're kicking a field goal, that guy's, no, are you insane? That's a horrible idea. We're not kicking a field goal. Have Cam Ward do something fun. That's what you need. That's why you need just like a random Madden player on the sideline being like, no, we're not kicking a field goal.
No. I would wonder too, like if he was an awesome offensive lineman when he played at Miami. I imagine that if somebody like just whiffs on a block, he probably gives that guy an earful. I would really hope that the new coach, the actual game management coach, is not to be confused with the current time management coach. That guy is equally hard. Where if Mario says, let's kick a field goal here, it wouldn't just be like, no. It'd be like, are you stupid? How dumb are you? Why are you even here? Go sit on the bench. Give me your headphones and you come back in a minute when you've calmed down, you've cleared your head. He needs that kind of tough love, I think.
That's actually really funny because we always see the coach yelling at a player in game. Yeah. We need someone to yell at the coach and be like, that was the stupidest game management decision.
What are you thinking?
That was so stupid. Go sit down.
He needs the Brian Kelly of late game management coaches just to get in his face. That would be so great.
Like all that, right. I just remember the one last moment there. Remember like the Tommy Reese when he was like calling from the booth down to the quarterback? That's what you need for him. You just like some guys like, yeah.
All right, your award here.
Guess what? We're going back 2 for 2 here. We're going back to Hugh Freeze from Auburn here. So last week we talked about Hugh Freeze, and he did win the game against Texas A&M. And we said, what were you doing when at the end of the game they were running the ball? When it was like there's a minute left, And instead of trying to actually score and win the game, they decided to, as you put it, incidentally score a field goal. They're just like, yeah, I guess we'll just score this field goal because why not? They decided to run the ball out. And one of the arguments that you and I guess I had made too was that, like, you know what? Maybe their best play is running, right? Maybe they should just run. Maybe they don't trust Peyton Thorne to throw. They should just run the ball. Okay. Fast forward to this week in a rivalry game in which they actually need to win this game to make a bowl game. And now just look at the splits last week, right? 41 runs, 31 passes. So again, more run heavy, but still a lot of passes too, but more run heavy. This week, they passed for less yards per play, actually ran more on a yards per play basis, and yet they threw almost twice as much. What are you doing? This makes no sense. If you determined last week that your best chance to beat Texas A&M was running, but you're actually running for more yards per play this week, why would you then? Because again, they lost by 14. They could have probably covered that spread. There was the Jarquez Hunter interception was horrific. That was like a horribly executed trick play. The second I saw him throw it, I'm like, oh no, oh god, what have they done? And sure enough, it was an interception in the end zone for a touchback. But like, why? What did you do? I don't understand what this Auburn team was trying to do here on that play. Yes, but like, how was the game plan in that game? We're gonna run the ball because we think running is the best way we're gonna win this game. But now in this game, we're gonna throw it, even though you're actually throwing it for less yards per attempt than you were last week. I don't know. Make it make sense. Does any of this make sense to you?
Hold on one second. I'm just taking a note here. So I want to make sure I got this quote right.
All right.
I don't understand what this Auburn team is trying to do. I think when we write the book about this Auburn team, that's literally like what the chapter about 2024 Auburn is. I don't know what they're trying to do, like from start to finish. Hugh Freeze has basically now just run away with. I think he's past Narduzzi. He's taken.
Yeah.
I don't think Narduzzi career has this many Narduzzi awards, does he? I don't think he does.
No, I don't think
he
so.
does.
No.
And just the concentration, it's just amazing. It's all of the dominant marathoners in the world come from Kenya because they have this elevation. It's their culture to do long distance running. They run at altitude, so they're just above and beyond anything else. There's something about Hugh Freeze where just once he got on the proper stage and just in the right or wrong situations, it's just his award. I still want to card Narduzzi because there's a certain flair to that, but this is just it just. I can't. There's no explanation, Robert. I'm just going to do that. I'll exit on that one. I can't. I just can't do a justification.
There's a couple other things I just want to note about this game too. One, there was at one point in this game they put up a stat that said Peyton Thorne is top 10 all time of college quarterbacks in throwing yards and passing touchdowns, and I'm like, why? He just played for forever. He's not, doesn't mean he's good. It just means he's been playing for forever. There needs to be something like, because you can have COVID exemptions and injury exemptions. There needs to be like asterisks put on some of this stuff where it's, oh, but he played for a billion years. This is the problem. You can't, just because they're on a top 10 list of the most passing yards does not mean they are actually good in any meaningful way, as you can clearly see from this. Secondly, I think next year, when Hugh Freeze is inevitably fired next year, we'll put that quote. I don't understand what this Auburn team is trying to do. Maybe that'll be the quote for next year. We'll save it for next year when he's fired, midway through next year.
Yeah. All right. All right. You have another one here.
Yes. So this is now my action. Yeah. I'm double dipping this week. I'm giving you.
Is this quarterback's named Will? Is that who's getting this? No, I'm joking. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, but this is we're gonna dogpile on Ohio State again, just highlighting how poor this offensive performance was. Will Howard threw for 175 yards, 2 interceptions, and I think there was like a fumble there or two, and then they ran 26 times for 77 yards. Conversely, and that is a 10-2 Ohio State team that's going to make the college football playoff in a couple of weeks. Washington threw for 315 yards and ran for 114. That's a 6-6 Washington team that just got destroyed by Oregon. What? How is, like, you're Ohio State. You're supposed to be one of the best teams in the game, and you got massively outgained in your rival against then Washington? I have a lot of questions here. And the 10 points you put up against Michigan is actually pitiful. One of the only teams that didn't put up 10 that put up 10 or less points against them was Northwestern. USC put up more points. Oregon put up more points. Washington put up more points. A ton of other teams that play Michigan, Texas, obviously, a ton of other teams that are good put up way more points against Michigan than you did, and yet you're going to be a top 10, top 8 seed in the playoff in a couple of weeks. That is very concerning. And we talk about this team just giving up, especially on offense. They just started phoning this thing in. And we've alluded to the fact that maybe Ohio State isn't nearly as dominant as maybe some people thought, but I am really concerned about this team. This seems like a really concerning thing. Now, again, it is a rivalry game. Michigan actually has a pretty good defense. Okay, maybe it's not the end of the world, but still, though, this is far from a good sign here. This is far from a, oh, everything's fine, we're good. I'd be very concerned here if I'm Ohio State, and maybe it's just a Michigan problem. I don't know, but if Ryan Day doesn't win a playoff game, I don't think he's the coach of Ohio State next year.
They said he's coming back. I read a good article by Feldman that said, should he want to come back? It just sounds, I don't know. There might be a John Calipari kind of analog here where he just lands at a different program and everybody just calls no harm, no foul on the buyout.
Oh,
One of the,
one more kind of question about this before we go. Would you want, and I'll go for you for USC and Florida for me, would you want your team to hire, let's say Ryan Day was fired, would you want your team to hire Ryan Day?
we're in year one of year three of a year rebuild. The offense is fine. The defense, they tried to portal away. They're out of it. I don't want to start over again. I think USC's headed in the right direction, and I don't want to take a step back. Although Day did make a brilliant hire in Jim Knowles as his defensive coordinator, you could see maybe some of the same progress in year two under Danton Lynn. No, but I don't know, straight from the yacht basin in Newport Beach and all the a-hole characteristics that come with it. No, my school is special. No. How about for Florida, though?
I think the thing is, on one hand, constantly losing to Michigan is a problem. But at the same time, like when you look at the wins and the games, losing by 1 point to Oregon, that good game against Georgia last year, 2 years ago, barely. Okay, you've lost to Michigan twice, but you barely lost to Oregon this year. You beat Penn State by 7. You crushed Indiana. You're consistently. There are very few weeks where I'm like, oh, this Ohio State team is in trouble. I think if you were to go to Florida, I think he has that dominant, like when we talk about dominant teams, we talk about Ohio State in that same breath because he and the Ohio State program itself, they have that dominant factor where it's like never in question. It's what's the only question is, are they going to cover the 20 or 30 point spread? That's the question. It's not like the Mario Cristobal, which like, oh, are they going to screw it up this week? It's what are they going to cover this big spread or not? And it's that Nick Saban Alabama, Urban Meyer Ohio State, or Florida, depending on your era. It's that level of dominance. Even the Kirby Smart from just a couple of years ago. It's not, are they going to win this game? It's, are they going to cover this big spread or not? And I think that in some ways is valuable to trade for. Billy Napier, not a bad coach. He's done some things. This been a scrappy program the last couple of years, but scrappy does not win SEC championships or win college football playoff games, right? You need to be a dominant team to be able to do that. You can't just be a plucky upstart and be like, oh yeah, we're a 7 point dog and we're going to cover the spread. No, you have to be dominant. You have to crush teams. There can't be any question when you're playing a lowly SEC team. You have to beat that team consistently.
Yeah, the other thing is the guy's won 87% of his games, and I think the kind of pressure that he gets after that kind of record can work against you. I think there's a lot of coaches that would say, my God, what do I have to do? Beloved there. Oh, I like to be as good as Urban Meyer was at peak Urban Meyer. There's going to be a lot of people who are like, nah, I'll stay at my job at Easy Tech. Just rather than just the whole nonsense that comes with that program. I think it's crazy. One other, not quite Narduzzi, but something that has to be mentioned just because when we do our previews, we go over the BuckMetrics. Braden Schrager has been on the bum list for most of this season. And I don't know if he got benched or if basically he was hurt. But this freshman, Micah Alejado, I think is how you pronounce his name, 135 apex in his career debut against New Mexico. Now, New Mexico is not a great defense, but where's this guy been hiding all season?
Yeah.
You're loyal to Brady. You just want more 50 apex and you just can't get enough of that. This guy comes in right away. It's okay. Just this is what you do. Just throw to the open guy and get first downs. Oh, that you know what? I don't know. Sorry, I love you, Timmy Chang, but bad job by you on that. All right, we close out with things noted for future reference. Robert, I want your opinion on this. So after the USC UCLA game, USC got one touchdown and five red zone possessions. And I was seeing some things I don't agree with it. They're saying Lincoln Riley has to give up play calling because he's a bad play caller. Okay. Then he had five touchdowns and six red zone trips against Notre Dame, who is a very good, like top 3-4 defense in all of FBS. And now I'm reading the same thing. Riley needs to give up play calling. He's no good. But am I just not objective here, or is that just like silly? In your
The thing is, it's funny you say 5 of 6 because the sixth was the thing that cost them the game. Basically, that game was a very competitive game. Actually, the box score does not do it justice. No, I agree. I don't think. I think USC will be okay. I think people are unfairly knocking it. I think maybe Miller Moss was not the answer. I think Malvea has been pretty good. I don't know if he's the long-term answer, but I think there will be positive regression for USC next week and even next year. And we even saw some positive steps for USC this year. Again, next year
yeah.
when Ohio State's losing a lot of their talent and Penn State's going to lose some of their talent as well and Oregon will lose some of theirs as well. You never know about USC. Maybe we're talking about USC in a couple months.
Yeah, and my gosh, Notre Dame rushed for. Let me pull it up here. I don't know how you could basically be in a game where the opponent rushes for 260 yards, and you say, "Yeah, the problem is the offensive play calling." Now, I'm not saying Danton Lynch should be fired. He's been very good. He just, like I said, it's a year one rebuild on the defense, and we didn't have the talent in the front seven. Because what I don't want to see is like what happened to Wisconsin. Hey, guess what? You fired Phil Longo. Congratulations, and you're scoring 16 points a game since that. Good job, Luke Fickle. Problem solved. I don't know. It's amazing how many coaches still do this, and it's almost just like an evergreen thing of material for me because these coaches make the same mistake where they just they get rid of the coordinator who clearly wasn't the problem when there's other problems. Again, good job, Wisconsin. You fixed everything. Hope you like 16 points a game. I think you fired the last guy for being that bad, but whatever. The season that I finally just capitulate and I think, okay, Jason Candle's actually going to do it this year. Yep, Toledo finishes 4-4 in the MAC. Thanks. Not that I had complete faith in him. I don't think I had them in the title game, but Toledo has such a big advantage in terms of facilities and resources and everything. And just to go 4-4 in that, I've heard some people saying Jason Candle really needs to get a Power 5 job. He's proven it. No, sorry, just not. As odd as it is to say, the dramatically average DeQuan Finn basically probably made Jason Kendall look like a better coach than he actually is.
Yeah, Toledo, not a great look. That you lost to Akron. That's not good. That is not.
Yeah,
That's not a good
no,
thing.
no. And bum list visitor, we'll call him Ben Finley too.
Mm-hmm.
Shoved it in your face. Lastly, I don't know if you saw this. So Liberty had that game canceled. The season win total for them was 10.5. I think if you bet the under, I think you're going to get your bet refunded because I think all 12 games have to be played.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
For action. Wow, that is whatever the opposite of a bad beat is. That is it. That's that's what is that? A lucky win, a lucky refund? I don't even know what you call that, but I don't know. If you got that, I don't want to hear of any bad beat stories for 2 years from you. With that, Robert, thank you, college football, especially this week. This is why you are so special. We love you, college football. You really delivered. Even you weirdos in College Station, congratulations and salute to y'all for the 5 minutes that you did well before you predictably lost. Robert, I will see you in the conference title games preview coming up shortly. Until then, thank you all for watching and viewing, and we will see you in the next episode.
See ya.